Good morning, YouTube. Welcome to the Reptile Barn. Today we're going to talk again about what we wish customers knew. This one is for everybody, all reptile keepers, because it's really important, and it's something that there is a little confusion out there sometimes. I had confusion over this, so some of you will know all of this already. Some of you won't have maybe even heard of some of it. So we're going to talk about thermal gradients. We're going to talk about what type of, what method to use to give your reptiles heat, radiant heat panels or under tank heating, like, the heat pads that can stick to the tank, or heat bulbs or anything like that. We're going to talk about a basking spot versus air temperature. That's a very key difference there. And we'll just kind of talk about how reptiles use their heat in general and why it's important. So first, a thermal gradient. A reptile needs a range of temperatures, right? Most of us know this. We kind of talk about the hot end and the cool end. That's not exactly accurate, but that is enough usually for most reptiles. As long as there's a warmer side and a cooler side within their safe range, the reptile is going to be pretty good, right? Now, why is that? A reptile is an ectotherm. Some people call that cold-blooded. I don't like that term because their blood's not cold, but an ectothermic animal depends on its environment to provide heat. Mammals and birds, we burn calories to produce our own heat. So we keep our body at the exact same temperature at all times. Even when we have a crazy high fever, it's only 6 degrees hotter than our body ever wants to be anyways, and a hypothermia is when we drop below that perfect temperature. But a reptile is completely different, or like a fish or insects or anything that's ectothermic, right? Amphibians. They fluctuate depending on their environment. If they are somewhere warm, they will be that exact warm temperature. If they're somewhere cool, they will cool down to that temperature. And that means that there's kind of the safe range for them, and depending on the reptile, that range is different. And that most of the time they're going to want to be in a fairly specific range, but it's still a greater range than, say, a mammal, right? Because a human wants to be 98.6 degrees at all times. A reptile, let's take a ball python for example. Most people keep their ball pythons at, I've seen anywhere from their cool side being down to 78 degrees. 80 to 84 is more common, right? That's kind of the cool side of their range, and that goes all the way up to the hot side or the hot spot of 90 to 94 degrees is generally what I see. And this seems to work very well for a ball python, right? They spend their time going back and forth. When they need to heat up, they go to their hot spot, they curl up on it, they warm up. When they want to cool down, they come off it and they cool down. It's pretty basic. The key is, if it's a true thermal gradient, they will be able to decide exactly how warm they want to be at any given time. The hot spot, by the way, for most reptiles is generally hotter than the reptile's body temperature really wants to be at. But they use it so they can heat up fairly quickly, right? This is very important to understand because I keep monitors, and mine are tree monitors. Their hot spots, as far as monitors are concerned, aren't even that hot, and they're at 120, 130 degrees. I've seen people that their hot spot for their monitor is 150, 160 degrees. If the reptile's body temperature were 160 degrees, it's dead, right? Obviously, it's not going to be 160 degree body temperature for your monitor. However, they want to be able to heat up quickly, right? Those types of animals. So they go to their hot spot, they bask for a few minutes or however long it takes to get their whole body temperature up, and then they come off it. I believe that it would be ideal if the animal actually had more of a true range. Like my ball pythons, they're sitting at about 84 degrees, or their hot spot, which is about 93 degrees. That's all they've got, right? I think it would be the perfect ideal situation if you had all the way down to maybe 78, a gradual gradient up to high 80s with one little hot spot at 92, 93 degrees. To me, I think that would be perfect. Then they would truly be able to choose. But the way we have it set up works fine for them. They're healthy, they're safe, they're comfortable, so that's okay. I want to talk quickly about this. This is a temperature gun, right? You can buy one on the internet, go on Amazon, look up temperature gun, and you can get one really cheap. You don't need an expensive one. Um, they work great. You just point at whatever the surface is that you want to know the temperature of, and you click the button, and it says, "Oh, this is 72 degrees, or this is 90 degrees, or this is 130 degrees." Right? This is crucial that you understand the surface is the hot spot, right? Um, the air temperature should never be 160 degrees for anything. Your animal will die. But the surface that it's sitting on can be very, very hot depending on the species. Again, I mean, my ball pythons, they're not going to touch 160 degrees. They're going to run away. But some animals, desert species for example, they want a very hot spot. So they will curl up on it. Then as soon as they're warm enough, they'll back off it, like a black-headed python, right? They want to poke their head out of their burrow. Their head soaks up a bunch of heat from the sun, and it's sitting on something out that was basking in the sun already. Then they can heat their body that way. It's kind of an adaptation. But the air temperature and the temperature of the surface that you're measuring are two different things. I see people that just use the little sticky thermometer that you stick on the side of your cage and tell, oh, how hot is it? That's great. That tells you the air temperature, but it is not telling you the temperature of the surface that's sitting under your heat lamp, right? That's very important. To me, a temperature gun is a required piece of equipment to keep reptiles. That's going to bother a lot of people who have been keeping reptiles and don't have one, but I'm sorry, to me, it's a requirement. You should, if you want to keep your reptile at its healthiest, you need to know what the surface temperature is of the actual physical surfaces that it's going to be sitting on, the substrate, its hides, the water bowl, everything, so that you can be in a safe range and so that you can get your hot spot correct, its basking area. Let's talk last thing about what to use to heat your reptile. Lots of animals want UV, right? Lots of the lizards, for example, want UV rays. They're better off. It's not necessarily that they're going to die without it or that they'll get sick without it, but they are better off. They're healthier with UV. To me, I think they're mercury vapor bulbs. Don't quote me on that. They have both. They have UV and heat out of the same bulb. So you can put the bulb over the cage if it's a screen-topped cage. Use the distance away from the cage to determine how hot exactly it's going to get, and that's great. You're getting UV and heat for the hot spot all in one. If you're in a situation where you have to mount the bulb inside the cage, you got to use, to me at least, I think it's insane not to use some sort of guard around the bulb so that the animal can't burn itself, because the surface of that bulb is hundreds of degrees. They will burn, guaranteed. We just saw on Facebook somebody show a group that we're a part of here in Alaska. Somebody showed a picture of a snake that was horrifyingly burned. They will burn themselves, right? So if you're using a bulb inside the cage, please use a guard around it. So this specific animal that we just saw was actually burned by a hot rock. Okay. The short answer on hot rocks is don't use them. Just don't use them. It's not safe, right? Many of them aren't even being regulated by a thermostat. It's just not safe. Don't use hot rocks. It's just not a great way for them to bask. Use something from above if you can. To me, the best heating product that exists is a radiant heat panel, especially the high quality ones. I've heard that Reptile Basics has a really, really good one. I haven't used them, but I've heard they're really good. Pro Products, we have loved their radiant heat panels. I wish every single animal I had one of those. It's totally safe. It's built so that you can put your hand right on it, even if it's at 100% heat output, and you're not going to burn yourself. So your animal is safe to touch it if it happens to brush up against the ceiling. But it sends heat down, radiating down to whatever it's over, whatever your hot spot you want to be. It's excellent product because you can mount it right inside your cage. It's just a flat panel that goes up on top of the cage. It's really easy to screw it into the ceiling. really awesome panels. And obviously we put them on a thermostat so that we're telling it exactly how hot we want that surface to get, and it's just fantastic. Great product. Lots of the racks use, belly heat, they call it, basically strips of heat tape or heat cable underneath the rack, underneath each row on the rack, so that again, you plug it into a thermostat and you tell it exactly how hot you want your belly heat to make your hot spot. And that works great too. Just your basic Reptile heat tape that you can buy from all sorts of reptile providers. So those really are the three I can think of that I would fully be happy with, that we've used, right? Is the belly heat with the heat tape or the heat cable, or heat from above with just a regular heat bulb or a radiant heat panel. Don't use a hot rock. Just please don't use a hot rock. So that's all. That's all I wanted to talk about real quick. Get yourself one of these. It will make your reptile happy. Try and get a gradient in your cage so that there's warmer and cooler areas for your reptile so that it can regulate its own temperature. Make sure you understand the difference between the surface temperature and the air temperature. The little sticky thermometers, or any thermometer really, unless you were laying it on the ground or something, is not going to tell you what the surface is. It's just like, you've been outside before where the sidewalk is so hot you can't even walk on it, but it's only 85 degrees outside. You're like, that doesn't make any sense. Why is it so hot? Well, the sun has energy pouring into that pavement or concrete, and it's heating up way hotter than the air temperature itself. Same thing inside your cage. If you have a heat bulb over that spot and the temperature in your cage over there is 85 degrees, it might be 120 degrees right there, and your snake never uses it. And you're like, oh, my snake doesn't like the heat. It's always just likes its cold side. Maybe, but maybe it just can't use it because it's too hot for it on the actual surface that it has to touch, right? So please keep that in mind. And there's lots of other things. Heating your reptile is one of the most, I would say heat and food are the two most important parts of keeping your reptile safe and healthy. So this is a very important topic. I don't mean to be yammering on and on and on and on about it, but it is very important, and I think that it's misunderstood by some people. It took me a long time to get all these concepts in my head, so please feel free to ask questions if you have any, and thank you for watching. This is the Reptile Bar.